Wade Holloway was 41 years old when his wife came back from vacation and said she met someone. She stood in the kitchen he had kept immaculate while she was gone, delivered a prepared speech about real feelings and mutual unhappiness, and moved her things into the guest room like she was wrapping up a project. She had a lawyer. She had paperwork. She had a plan. And she had already decided exactly what kind of man Wade was: steady, generous, and too principled to fight back. She filed for divorce 3 days later. What Courtney did not know was that the same patience she had spent 8 months mistaking for passivity was already being converted into something else entirely. The same methodical precision that made Wade exceptional at building structures that outlast everything, he was now applying to her. 3 weeks after she came home, she was calling his phone 3 times in one evening, leaving voicemails with a voice that no longer sounded like a woman who had a plan. She was begging him to come home. She had no idea it was already too late. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The drawings were spread across the kitchen island in 3 neat rows. Wade had arranged them the way he arranged everything, by order of dependency: foundation plans first, structural elevations second, detail sheets third. You always started with what held everything else up. That was the rule. That was how you kept from building something that looked solid, but wasn't. He lifted his coffee mug and took a slow sip. The house was quiet around him. Not an empty quiet, a full one, the kind that comes from a space that has been thought through and cared for. The kitchen walls were a warm slate gray, a color Wade had tested on 4 different sections of drywall before committing. The cabinets were custom, not expensive custom, but precise custom, designed in his home office and built by a contractor he had vetted personally. The countertops were a pale quartz that caught the morning light and turned it soft. He had renovated every room in this house over 4 years. Nights, weekends, every spare hour he could carve out. The permits were filed correctly. The contractors were paid on time. The appraisal that came back 6 months ago put the home at $180,000 more than what they had paid for it. Wade had read that number on the appraisal report, nodded once, and filed it away. That was how he was built. He did the work. He noted the result. He moved on to the next thing. He was 41 years old, and he was good at his job in a way that was quiet and permanent. Senior architect at Mercer & Dunn, a mid-sized firm with a strong civic portfolio. He had spent 15 years building a professional reputation that did not require him to talk about it. It preceded him into rooms and did the talking on its own. There was a partnership track conversation currently on the table. His name had been mentioned seriously, which at Mercer & Dunn meant something. He uncapped a red pen and made a small, precise note in the margin of an elevation sheet. He had been up since 5:30. He had reviewed his project correspondence, eaten breakfast, and started on the drawings before the sun was fully up. This was not discipline in the way people talked about discipline, grinding and white-knuckling. This was just how his mind was organized. He liked the early morning hours. The house was quiet. The thinking was clear. He had 1 site meeting this afternoon. Before that, he had 3 hours to work, which was enough. The marriage was 7 years old. He didn't think about it in those terms very often, but the number was there if he reached for it. 7 years. The first 3 had been easy in the way good things feel easy, when you are not yet aware of how much work is quietly holding them up. Then Courtney left her corporate position, a marketing director role at a healthcare company that had been grinding her down for the better part of 2 years, and the 4th year changed shape. She needed time to rebuild. She was clear about that, and he was clear about his answer, which was, take it. Take whatever you need. He introduced her at industry events. His events, architecture and development circles, civic project dinners, The kind of rooms where a name could find traction if the right person heard it at the right moment. He put her name in those rooms before it carried any real weight. He vouched for her work before she had enough of it to show anyone. He bought her the laptop she used to build her consulting business. A good one, not a compromise. He paid the mortgage alone for 4 years without resentment because he believed in her and because that was what you did for someone you believed in. The consulting business had grown. She had real clients now. She was ascending, genuinely, in a way that was earned, even if the runway had been funded by someone else. He had never asked her to acknowledge that. That was not why he did it. She had been distant for weeks now. He had noticed it the way he noticed everything, quietly, without announcing the observation. She was present in the house, but not quite in it. Her eyes during dinner were somewhere else. Her phone was face down on surfaces more often than it used to be. When he mentioned something about his day, she listened, but with the faint delay of someone who had to travel back from wherever she actually was before she could respond. He had attributed it to the Cancun trip planning. She and her friends had been organizing the 14-day girls' trip for months, and logistics always made her sharp around the edges. He had attributed it to a client push she mentioned in passing. He had attributed it to the ordinary friction of two people sharing a life across a busy season. He was an architect. He read structures for a living. But there are some structures you do not want to look at directly. And so you read them wrong on purpose, and you call it something else. The front door opened at 9:47. The sound of wheels on hardwood. A suitcase. Then Courtney. Tan, put together, her hair pulled back the way she wore it when she was moving with intention. Wade set down his pen. He pushed back from the island and moved toward her, already forming the shape of a smile. She did not move toward him. She stopped just inside the kitchen. Her hand released the suitcase handle, and she set her bag down at her side. Not carelessly, not in a rush, deliberately. The way you set something down when you have thought about the exact moment you will do it, and you are now doing exactly that. She stood near the counter. She looked at him, and she didn't say anything yet, but something in her posture already had. She did not sit down. That was the first thing Wade registered. There were 4 chairs at the kitchen island. She knew where they were. She had eaten breakfast at them hundreds of times. She did not move toward any of them. She stood near the counter with her hands loose at her sides, and she looked at him with an expression he had never seen on her face before. Something careful and settled, like a person who had already crossed a river and was now watching from the other bank. "Wade!" Her voice was even. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me get through it." He said nothing. He stood where he was. "I met someone while I was away." She did not look away from him. "I have real feelings for him. And I know that's hard to hear, but I've thought about this carefully. And I think we both know this marriage has been over for a long time. I'm not here to hurt you." A small pause, like a rest note in a piece of music she had rehearsed. "I think we should separate. I think that's the honest thing to do." The kitchen was very quiet. She had prepared this. Every clause of it. He could hear the preparation in the way the sentences fit together. No false starts, no searching for words. This was not a woman discovering her feelings out loud. This was a woman delivering them. There was a difference, and he could hear it clearly, and he filed the difference away without showing that he had. He let the silence sit for a moment. Then, "How long?" She met his eyes. "We met on this trip." He looked at her. He nodded once. He did not believe her. Not because he had anything concrete yet. He had nothing but the shape of what she was saying, and the shape was wrong. 2 weeks did not produce this. 2 weeks did not build this kind of settled certainty, this organized stillness, this speech with no rough edges. He read structures for a living. He knew what a load-bearing wall looked like, and he knew when one had been placed long before the day you were standing in front of it. She was not telling him when this started. She was telling him what she wanted the starting point to be. "All right," he said. Her shoulders moved, a barely there shift, like something in her had been braced for impact and was now adjusting to the fact that the impact hadn't come the way she expected. She picked up her suitcase. She moved down the hallway. The guest room door opened and then it closed. He stood at the island. He did not move for a long time. He did not sleep that night. He lay in the dark in the bedroom they had shared for 7 years, and he stared at the ceiling he had retextured himself, and he did not sleep. He was not crying. He was not numb. He was doing something quieter and more precise than either of those things. He was thinking, with the full, uninterrupted attention of a man who had just been handed a problem he needed to understand before he could do anything about it. By morning, she was up before him. He could hear her moving through the house with a particular kind of purpose. Closet drawers opening, the soft drag of a box across the floor of the guest room, the distinct sound of a woman sorting her life into categories. She moved through the shared spaces carefully, considerately, the way a person moves when they believe they are being gracious. She made coffee, but did not offer him any, not out of cruelty. She was simply already operating on a different floor of the building, looking down. He watched her the way he watched everything, quietly, without announcement. On the 4th day, she sat him down at the kitchen table. She had a folder. She set it between them and folded her hands on top of it with the deliberateness of someone who had done their homework and was prepared to walk you through it. Inside the folder were several pages, clean, formatted, attorney-drafted, a separation agreement. She had outlined a division of assets. The house would be sold and the proceeds divided. She explained this to him with the measured tone of someone who expected the explanation to be the hard part and everything after it to follow smoothly. He picked up the document. He read it. He took his time. Each page, each clause, each number. He turned the last page and set it down flat on the table. She was watching him. Her posture was open, patient, ready. "I'll have my attorney review it," he said. Something in her eased. It was subtle. The faint relaxation of a person who has been carrying a difficult conversation and has now decided the worst of it is behind them. She nodded. She said that was fine, of course. That was reasonable. She stood. She picked up her folder. She moved back toward the guest room with the quiet confidence of a woman whose plan was proceeding on schedule. She thought his steadiness meant he was beginning to accept it. She was wrong about that. The next morning, Courtney was on her phone before 9. Wade could hear her from his home office. The low, careful voice of a woman who had moved her conversations to rooms he wasn't in. The guest room door would open, then close. Open, then close. He could not make out words. He did not try to. He sat at his desk and opened his laptop and did what he did every morning. Managed the household. Bills, subscriptions, account balances. The administrative backbone of a life he had always been the one to maintain. Courtney had never been interested in the systems. She trusted him to run them. He always had. He opened the joint cell phone account. Routine. The same screen he had looked at dozens of times. He scrolled through the current billing period without any particular intention, and then he stopped. An unknown number. Not in his contacts. Not hers, as far as he could see. He looked at the date of the most recent call. Then he scrolled back. The number appeared again. And again. Consistent, regular, spread across the billing history in a pattern that had no gap longer than a few days. He clicked through to the previous months, and the month before that, and the month before that. 8 months. He sat very still. He did not push back from the desk. He did not stand up. He did not make a sound. He simply looked at the screen and understood, with the quiet, structural clarity of a man who reads load-bearing walls for a living, exactly what he was looking at. This was not a man she met in Cancun. This was a man she had been talking to through a work conference Wade attended alone. Through evenings he remembered clearly. Through a Sunday morning she had told him she was at the gym. The affair did not begin on vacation. The vacation was where she gave herself permission to stop hiding it. He clicked to the printer icon. The pages fed out one by one. He stacked them, folded them once, and put them in the inside pocket of his jacket. Then he finished reviewing the accounts. He closed the laptop. He picked up his keys. Beverly's apartment was 20 minutes from the house. She opened the door before he could knock a second time. She had always been like that, tuned to a frequency most people couldn't hear. She looked at his face and said nothing. She stepped aside and let him in. He sat on her couch. He pulled the folded pages from his jacket pocket and set them on the coffee table between them. She picked them up. She read them the way she read everything, methodically, without performance. She was a woman who had spent her career in historic preservation, which meant she was used to finding the truth buried in records that other people had stopped paying attention to. She did not rush. She turned each page with the same unhurried attention. When she finished, she set them down and looked at him. She didn't come home to confess, Beverly said. She came home to close the door on her way out. She thought she was being gracious. 8 months, Wade said. At minimum. Beverly leaned back. She had already decided. Long before Cancun, she had already decided. The trip was just where she let herself say it out loud. A pause. What do you need from me? Not, what are you going to do? Not, you must be furious. Just the question that mattered. A witness, Wade said. And time. Beverly nodded. You have both. He drove home in the same silence he had left in. Courtney filed for divorce 9 days later. Within the week, she had told her friends, some colleagues, and what felt like half of her social world that she and Wade were separating, that she was finally choosing herself, that they had grown apart, that it was mutual and overdue, and nobody's fault. She said it like a woman releasing something she had been holding too long. She said it like the story had already been edited. Wade said nothing publicly. He made one call to an attorney a woman in his firm had quietly recommended. Sharp, thorough, the kind who read documents the way Wade did, all the way through. He retained her the same day. He came home that evening, stood in the kitchen of the house he had built and fought for, and kept running for 4 years alone, and he sat down at his drafting table and he opened a new folder. He labeled it simply. He put the phone records inside. Then he went to work. 3 weeks after Courtney had come home from Cancun, her name lit up his phone 3 times in a single evening. He let all 3 go to voicemail. Beverly was at the kitchen table when he played the 3rd one on speaker. He set the phone between them and pressed play. Courtney's voice came through the small speaker, controlled on the surface, but only just. Something underneath it had shifted. Something structural. Wade! Please. We need to talk. Please come home. The recording ended. Wade picked up the phone. He deleted the voicemail. He set the phone face down on the table. Beverly said nothing. He picked up his pencil and went back to work. Wade slept 4 hours, maybe 5. He was up before 6, dressed before 7, and sitting in the waiting area of his attorney's office by 8:15. The receptionist offered him coffee. He accepted it. He drank it slowly and watched the street through the window while he waited. Her name was Sandra Osei, a woman in her mid-50s with close-cropped natural hair and reading glasses she wore on a chain around her neck. She had reviewed the separation agreement overnight. He had sent it over the evening before, after the voicemails. She came out to meet him herself, rather than sending someone. Come on back, she said. Her office was small and deliberately uncluttered. A desk, 2 chairs, a credenza stacked with organized files. The separation agreement was printed and laid flat in front of her, marked in 3 places with a yellow highlighter. She sat. She put on her glasses. This was written, she said, as though your name being the only name on the mortgage is a formality rather than a legal fact. Wade nodded. He had suspected as much. It treats the property as a shared marital asset and proposes an equal division of sale proceeds. She tapped the highlighted section with one finger. That is not the correct legal picture. Your name alone appears on the mortgage. Your documentation of the renovation costs, the permits, the contractor invoices, the payment records, is comprehensive. You funded the increase in appraised value entirely. That is not a technicality. That is the record. How does that change her position? Wade said. Significantly. Sandra set down her pen. A claim on proceeds she did not contribute to, against a mortgage she was never legally party to, is not a strong claim. Her attorney either did not investigate thoroughly or was not given accurate information about how the property was structured. She paused. Either way, it is not your problem. It is hers. Wade picked up his copy of the agreement. He looked at the highlighted sections. Then he set it back down. File a response, he said. I want everything documented. Already drafting it, Sandra said. He was back at the house by 10. He did not sit. He went directly to his home office, opened the cabinet where he kept the household financial records, organized by year, tabbed by month, the way he organized everything, and he pulled 18 months of joint account statements. He stacked them on his desk, and he sat down. He began at the beginning. He worked forward. For the first hour, he found nothing unusual. Regular expenses, utilities, groceries. The mortgage payment he made every month without fail. Her business software subscriptions that he had quietly absorbed into the household budget without being asked. Everything accounted for. Everything familiar. Then he found the first one. A transfer. Small. $400. Moved to an external account on a Tuesday in October 18 months ago. The account number was not one he recognized. He wrote it down. He kept reading. He found the next one 6 weeks later. $350. Same external account. Then, another 2 months after that. $500. Then, smaller amounts. More frequent. The intervals were irregular. Sometimes weeks apart. Sometimes a month and a half. Never large enough to create a visible dip. Never on the same date twice. It was the financial equivalent of not leaving footprints. He got out a legal pad and began writing down each transfer. Date, amount, cumulative total. He worked through every statement. He did not stop when his coffee went cold. He did not stop when his back began to ache from leaning over the desk. When he reached the end of the last statement, he set down his pen and looked at the legal pad. $34,000, transferred over 18 months in small, careful increments into an account he had never known existed. He looked at the date of the first transfer. October, 18 months ago. The affair, based on the phone records, began approximately 6 months after that. She was not confused about her feelings when this started. She had not been blindsided by love and made impulsive decisions. She had opened an account, and she had begun moving money, and she had done it steadily and quietly for half a year before she ever started calling that number. This was not an exit she stumbled into. This was an exit she built, while he paid the mortgage, while he covered her subscriptions, while he put her name in rooms and stood beside her and told people she was exceptional. She had already been leaving. He picked up the statements. He did not fold them. He went to the printer and made one clean copy of everything. He put the originals back in the cabinet, in their proper order. He picked up his keys. Beverly opened the door and looked at his face and did not ask any questions. He sat on the same couch. He laid the copied bank statements on the coffee table beside the phone records that were still there from the last time. Beverly had not moved them. She picked up the statements and read them the same way she read everything, all the way through, without rushing. When she finished, she set them down. She looked at the 2 sets of documents side by side on the table. Then she looked at him. She wasn't falling in love, Beverly said. She was making arrangements. For 18 months, Wade said. Beverly folded her hands. Her voice was quiet and even. All right, she said. What are we building? Beverly called at 7:42 in the morning. Wade was already up. He was standing at the kitchen counter with his second cup of coffee, looking out at the backyard, the stone patio he had laid himself 2 summers ago, one weekend at a time. He watched a bird move across the railing of the deck and picked up on the second ring. I need to come over, Beverly said. No greeting, no preamble, just that. When? He said. An hour. He said fine. He refilled his coffee and waited. She arrived with a manila folder tucked under her arm and a look on her face that was not quite anger and not quite satisfaction. Something between the two. The look of a person who found exactly what she suspected she would find and wishes she hadn't been right. She came inside. She sat at the kitchen table. She opened the folder and set it flat in front of him without a word. I spent last night in the public court records databases, she said. The ones I use for preservation work. Property filings, civil case histories, professional registration records. She tapped the top page. Philip Okafor has been here before. Wade pulled the folder closer. The first document was a civil complaint filed 3 years ago by a former business partner, a woman who ran a commercial interior design firm. The complaint alleged that Philip had used a personal relationship with her to gain introductions into her client network, secured 2 development contracts through those introductions, and then ended the relationship and the business arrangement simultaneously once those contracts were signed. The case settled. The terms were sealed, but the filing itself was public, and the language in it was specific. The second document was older, 5 years back. A different woman, a landscape architecture firm, the same basic shape, romantic relationship, professional access, extraction, exit. That one settled too, quietly, quickly. Wade read both complaints all the way through. He did not rush. When he finished, he set the papers down and looked at the table for a moment. He has a method, Beverly said. Yes. He doesn't pursue these women because he wants them. He pursues them because of what they're connected to. Wade nodded slowly. He was already seeing it, the structure of it, the way the pieces fit together. He looked at it the way he looked at a building plan with a flaw buried in it. You had to follow the load path. You had to find where the weight was actually going. Courtney was a marketing consultant, a good one. Her talent was real. But her client list, the one that had grown meaningfully over the past 3 years, had not materialized from nothing. It had been built on introductions he made at industry events, on his name attached to hers, in rooms she hadn't been in before he brought her, on his 15 years of built relationships handed over without a second thought, because he believed in her and wanted her to have everything she was reaching for. Philip Okafor was a real estate developer. He needed marketing contacts. He needed referral pipelines into commercial clients. He needed exactly the kind of network Courtney had assembled, the network Wade assembled first. He didn't fall for her, Wade said. It was not a question. No, Beverly said. He identified her. Wade stood. He walked to the window and stood there for a moment, with his coffee cup in his hand, not drinking from it. Courtney believed she had found something real. She had blown up her marriage. 8 months of lying, 18 months of quietly moving money. For a man who looked at her the way a contractor looks at a useful material. She did not know that. She could not know that, because Philip Okafor had refined this into something that looked, from the inside, like being truly seen. Wade set his cup down on the counter and picked up his phone. He scrolled to a contact he had worked with for years. Marcus Riley, a commercial developer he had collaborated with on 3 civic projects over the past decade. A man who was honest without being brutal and thorough without being slow. He called. Marcus picked up on the 3rd ring. They exchanged 2 sentences of normal greeting, and then Wade asked him, plainly and without context, whether Marcus had come across any new business outreach lately that had arrived through unusual channels. Marcus laughed a little. Funny you bring that up. He got a call 2 weeks ago. Came through a referral from a marketing consultant. Name was Holloway, I think. Courtney Holloway. You know her? Wade kept his voice even. I do, he said. The person who routed it. What was his name? Okafor. Philip Okafor. Real estate developer, he said. Wanted to talk about a co-development opportunity. Did you move forward with it? No. Didn't feel right. Marcus paused. Should I know something about this guy? I'll follow up with you, Wade said. Thanks, Marcus. He ended the call. He stood in the kitchen holding the phone, and he did not move for a long moment. Philip had already started. The relationship was still ongoing, the divorce not yet settled, and Philip had already begun rooting business through Courtney's name, through the referral credibility she had built, through Wade's contacts. Wade set the phone face down on the counter. He walked back to the table and sat across from Beverly. He pulled the manila folder toward him and looked at the 2 complaints again. Then he looked at the phone records, then at the bank statements, still stacked in the corner where he had left them. He thought about load-bearing walls, where the weight sat, where a single, precise point of pressure would bring the whole thing down cleanly, without noise, without anything that could be traced back to the hand that applied it. He did not reach for a pen. Not yet. He simply sat and understood, for the first time, the complete shape of what had been built against him, and he began to think about what to build back. The call came at 9:17 the next morning. Wade was at his drafting table, a set of elevation drawings spread open in front of him when his phone buzzed against the wood. He looked at the screen. Darius Prentice. He picked up. Wade. Darius's voice was warm but careful. The voice of a man who had thought about what he was going to say before dialing. Hey, man. I heard about you and Courtney. I wanted to call. I'm real sorry. I appreciate that, Wade said. You're good people. I've always said that. I wanted you to know I said it now, too. There was a pause, the kind that happens when someone is waiting to see whether the other person will make it easier on them. Wade did not make it easier. Can I ask what happened? Darius said. If that's okay. Wade leaned back in his chair. He looked at the elevation drawings in front of him. Clean lines, measured angles, nothing left to interpretation. She came home from Cancun and told me she met someone, Wade said. Said she had real feelings for him and that the marriage was over. I found out later the relationship had been going on for 8 months before that trip. She filed for divorce. The line went very quiet. 8 months, Darius said. Yes. Another silence, longer this time. Wade, she told my mother you were... Darius stopped, started again. She said you were emotionally unavailable, that she had been unhappy for a long time. Years. Wade did not flinch. He had expected something like this. Not the exact words, but the shape of them. I know what she told people, he said. I know what happened. He said it without heat, without bitterness, just the plain weight of a man who had the documentation to back up every word, and didn't need to wave it around to feel certain. Darius didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then, all right. That was all. Then the line went dead. Wade set the phone down and went back to his drawings. He worked for another 2 hours without stopping. It took less than 48 hours. Courtney got the call on a Thursday evening. Her mother's voice, calm and deliberate, in the way it only got when something serious was underneath it. Sunday dinner. Everyone would be there. She needed Courtney to come. Courtney said yes. She told herself it would be fine. Her family loved her. They knew her. She had handled the narrative carefully. She had been thoughtful about what she shared and with whom, and she had shaped the story with the kind of precision she applied to everything. Wade was good, but they had grown apart. She had been quietly unhappy. She had finally been honest with herself. She drove to her parents' house Sunday afternoon with her chin up and her story straight. Her mother opened the door and hugged her. Her father was in the living room. Darius was at the table already, a glass of water in front of him, not smiling. They sat down to eat. The first few minutes were normal. Food passed around, small talk about her nephew's soccer, the price of gas. Courtney began to breathe easier. Then her mother set down her fork. "I want to ask you something," her mother said, "and I want you to be honest with me." Courtney looked up. Darius spoke with Wade. The air in the room changed. "When did this start?" her mother said. "With this other man." "We met in Cancun." Darius said 8 months. Her mother's voice did not rise. It never rose. That was almost worse. Wade told him 8 months. Courtney looked at Darius. He was looking at his plate. "It's complicated," Courtney said. "I'm not asking for complicated," her mother said. "I'm asking when." The question sat in the middle of the table like something heavy that everyone could see, and no one could move. Courtney opened her mouth. She reached for the version of the story that had worked everywhere else, the one where she was a woman who had slowly realized what she needed, where she had finally chosen herself, where the timeline was less important than the truth of what she felt. It didn't survive the room. Her mother's eyes were patient and completely unmovable, and Darius was still looking at his plate, and her father had set down his fork too, and the story she had told, the clean one, the reasonable one, the one that made her the protagonist of her own reinvention, came apart in the silence, the way a structure comes apart when the foundation gives. She didn't cry at the table. She held herself together through the rest of dinner, though the conversation never fully recovered, and her mother did not bring it up again, and that stillness was somehow worse than if she had. She drove back to Philip's condo in the dark, with both hands tight on the wheel. She let herself in with the key he had given her 6 weeks ago. The condo was quiet and dim. She sat on his couch and did not turn on a light. She called him. It rang through to voicemail. She set the phone on the cushion beside her and sat in the dark and waited. He called back 2 hours later. "Hey," he said. He sounded like a man calling between other things, distracted, briefly available, already somewhere else in his mind. "I had a hard night," she said. "Yeah?" A short pause. "What happened?" She told him about the dinner, the questions, her mother's face. He listened, or at least the line stayed open. "Family stuff is tough," he said when she finished. "You all right?" "I don't know," she said. "You'll be okay," he said. Easy, quick. The words of a man closing a topic rather than sitting inside one with her. "Hey, I've got an early call tomorrow. Let's talk this week." The line went quiet before she could answer. She sat with the phone in her hand in the dark condo. The city made its sounds outside the window. Inside, there was nothing. For the first time since she came home from Cancun, she let herself feel it. Not the version of this she had been telling herself, not the story of clarity and courage and choosing something new, the specific texture of what she had actually chosen. She woke up to the voicemail at 7:43 in the morning. Philip's side of the bed was empty. Had been for a while. The sheets were cool. She could hear him somewhere in the condo, moving around, doing whatever he did in the early hours before she existed to him again. She pressed play. Her attorney's voice was measured and professional, the way lawyers' voices get when the news is bad, and they have learned to deliver it without inflection. "Courtney, it's Sandra. I need you to call me back today when you have a moment. Wade's legal team has submitted documentation on the property. There are some things we need to discuss." Courtney sat up slowly. The city outside the window was already bright and moving. She stared at the far wall and held the phone in both hands. She already knew. She didn't know the details yet, but she knew the shape of it. She could feel it, the way you feel weather before it arrives. She called Sandra back from the bathroom with the door closed and the shower running so Philip wouldn't hear. The news came in clear, flat sentences. Wade's sole name on the mortgage. Every renovation invoice, every permit, every payment record, organized and submitted. Sandra used the word comprehensive twice. She used the phrase legally weak once, and that was the one that stayed. The asset division you outlined in the original agreement assumed shared ownership, Sandra said. That assumption doesn't hold. If we litigate this, we are not in a strong position. What does that mean for the settlement? It means we negotiate, Sandra said. On his terms, largely. Courtney stood in the steam of the running shower and looked at herself in the fogged mirror. The reflection was blurred, unreadable. She thanked Sandra, hung up, turned off the shower she had never stepped into. The house was gone. Not legally transferred yet. That would take time, but gone in the way that mattered. The clean split she had structured her entire future around, the financial foundation under everything she had planned, had just turned to sand under her feet. She got dressed and walked out into the kitchen. Philip was at the counter with his coffee and his phone, already deep in something that had nothing to do with her. She told him about the call. She kept her voice steady and practical. She laid out the situation the way she would present a client problem. Here is the issue. Here is what it means. Here is what comes next. He listened, or he appeared to. That's a tough break, he said. She waited for more. There was no more. The legal fees alone are going to be significant, she said. And without the house equity, the timeline changes completely. He nodded slowly, the nod of a man whose attention has already moved on. You've got your business. You'll figure it out. He glanced at his phone. I've got a site walkthrough at 9. You okay? She looked at him. Sure, she said. He kissed her on the cheek and left. She stood in the kitchen holding her coffee and listened to the door click shut behind him. The client calls came 4 days apart. The first was Marcus Webb, a regional hospitality brand she had built from a mid-tier account into her flagship case study. His operations director called, not Marcus himself, which told her everything before the woman finished her first sentence. Restructuring internal priorities, pausing outside consulting engagements for the foreseeable future. Professional, apologetic, final. Courtney made calls. She had relationships in that industry. She asked careful questions. What came back to her, through 2 separate conversations, was a name, Philip Okafor, and the suggestion that her association with him had surfaced in professional conversations, that people in the architecture and development world, people adjacent to Wade's orbit, had become aware of Philip's prior civil complaints, the pattern behind them, and that her name was now attached to his. The second client, a wellness company she had retained for 11 months, followed 6 days later. Same language, same finality. She sat in Philip's home office after the second call, her laptop open to a client file she could no longer bill against, and she did the math she had been refusing to do. She had left Wade with a plan. The plan had a house in it, and 2 anchor clients, and a man who looked like a future. In 10 days, those things had become a contested property she could not claim. 2 suspended contracts, and a man who told her she would figure it out and left for a site walkthrough. Her mother had not called since Sunday dinner. Darius sent a single text, "Hope you're okay," and did not follow up when she didn't respond. That evening she sat on Philip's couch and stared at her phone for a long time. Then she called Wade. It rang out. She called again. Same. She held the phone against her knee and looked at nothing for several minutes. Then she called a third time, and when the voicemail picked up, she heard her own voice reach for steady and not quite get there. "Wade, please, we need to talk. Please come home." She hung up. She set the phone on the cushion beside her. She sat very still in the middle of all of it. No house, a man who had already stopped seeing her, 2 clients gone, a family that no longer believed the story she told, and she understood, completely, and without any remaining room to argue otherwise, that every single assumption she had made about Wade Holloway had been wrong. He called on a Tuesday morning at 9:17. No preamble. No warmth, but no coldness either. Just his voice, even and unhurried, like a man confirming a contractor appointment. "I got your messages," Wade said. "I can meet you Thursday. There's a coffee shop on Meridian, half a block from my office. Compass. You know it?" She said she did. 10 o'clock, he said. "I'll be there." He hung up before she could say anything else. She arrived 7 minutes early. Compass was small and well lit. The kind of place that smelled like dark roast and wood polish and moved at its own quiet pace. Wade had chosen a table near the side window, not tucked away, not exposed, just a table. She understood without being told that he had chosen everything about this deliberately. The location, the hour, the seat she would have to walk to while he was already settled. He was already settled. He had a coffee in front of him, half finished. His jacket was on the back of his chair. He was looking at something on his phone when she walked in, and he set it face down on the table when he saw her. Not rushed. Completed. She had dressed carefully. She knew she had. The black blazer, the earrings that always made her feel composed and professional. She had rehearsed what she was going to say for 2 days, working the words into an order that felt honest. But when she sat down across from him, something happened to all of that preparation, because he looked fine. Not performing fine. Actually fine. Rested and solid and entirely at home in his own skin, like a man who had been sleeping well and working well and moving through his days without the kind of damage she had expected to see. She had expected damage. She had not gotten it. And that undid her in a way she hadn't planned for. "Do you want anything?" he said, nodding toward the counter. "I'm okay," she said. He nodded once and waited. She told him she made a mistake. She said it clearly, without deflection, because she had decided that clarity was the only currency he would accept. She told him that Philip was not who she thought he was, that the man she walked toward had turned out to be someone she did not recognize up close. She told Wade she had acted out of fear. Fear of being still. Fear of being ordinary. Fear that the life they had was as large as her life was ever going to get. She said she understood now that she had confused that fear with certainty, and that she had caused him real harm, and that she was sorry. She said she wanted to come back, that she would do the work, that she knew she had no right to ask, but she was asking anyway. She had rehearsed it. It still cost her something to say it. She meant most of it. When she finished, the table was quiet. The coffee shop moved around them. A milk steamer hissed. Someone laughed near the door. The ambient noise of a morning that had no idea what was happening at the side window table. Wade sat with his hands folded loosely around his cup. He had not looked away from her once while she spoke. He did not look away now. Then he spoke. "You came home from vacation and told me you met someone." His voice was low and unhurried. "You said it like you were doing me a favor, like honesty was the gift you were giving me after 8 months of lying to my face." Courtney opened her mouth. He continued, not harshly, just steadily. 8 months, Courtney. I found the phone records the morning after you handed me that separation agreement. The same account you used to call him was on our joint plan. Consistent contact going back to last February. He paused. You didn't meet someone in Cancun. You took Cancun as the moment to finally say it out loud. She closed her mouth. The account at Meridian Bank. The one I didn't know about. He let that sit for one beat. $34,000. Moved over 18 months in amounts small enough to not look like anything. Small enough to look like ordinary expenses if I ever glanced at the wrong line. He said it without heat, like a man reading measurements. You started building that account 6 months before the affair began. That means you were planning your exit before you had a reason to give it. You were just waiting to find one. She looked down at the table. You had a lawyer before you had the conversation with me, he said. You handed me documents on day 4. You came home with a speech and a signed retainer and a story about choosing yourself. And you expected me to be too hurt to look closely, too grateful for your honesty to check the math, too steady to do anything that surprised you. He paused again. Every single thing you assumed about me was wrong. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. There's something else, Wade said, something you deserve to know. She looked up. Philip Okafor has done this before. Not once. Twice, that's documented. Civil complaints from former business partners. Both cases settled quietly. Both involved the same pattern. He identifies women in professional fields adjacent to his, builds a relationship, accesses their network, and exits once the value is secured. He held her gaze. He didn't pursue you because he fell for you. He pursued you because you had a growing consulting client list. And that list exists because of the introductions I made, the events I brought you to, the rooms I put your name in before you had a track record to stand on. He used you to get to what I helped you build. Courtney stared at him. I'm not telling you that to hurt you, Wade said. I'm telling you because you deserve to know exactly what happened to you. The table was very quiet. I'm not angry at you, he said. I genuinely feel sorry for you. He unfolded his hands and sat back slightly. But I'm not your option. I was your husband. You ended that. There's a difference. He stood. He reached into his jacket pocket and set 2 folded bills on the table for the coffee. He picked up his phone. He put on his jacket one arm at a time. He looked at her once, not with cruelty, not with satisfaction. Just a clear, finished look. The look of a man who has said exactly what he came to say, and nothing more. Then he walked toward the door. He did not look back. Not as a gesture, not for effect, because there was nothing back there that required him anymore. Courtney sat at the table. The coffee shop kept moving around her. The milk steamer hissed again. Someone near the door said, "Have a good one," and pushed out into the morning. She did not reach for her phone. She did not stand up. She sat with her hands in her lap, and the 2 folded bills in front of her, and the full weight of everything he had just said, pressing down without drama or distortion. Just the plain, organized truth of it, laid out in the voice of a man who had never once needed to raise it. She had no next move. The formal response landed on a Thursday. Wade's attorney filed it with the county court at 9:14 in the morning. By 11:30, Courtney's attorney had called her twice. She finally picked up on the third call, standing in the kitchen of Philip's condo with a cup of coffee she had stopped tasting 20 minutes ago. The assessment was brief and not gentle. Wade's documentation on the house was airtight. The mortgage, the renovation permits, the contractor invoices paid from his personal accounts, the appraised value increase, $180,000, every dollar of it traceable back to work he commissioned and funded alone. Her attorney told her plainly that contesting the house in litigation would be expensive, slow, and almost certainly unsuccessful. And that was before the bank transfer records entered the picture. The $34,000 was now formally documented in Wade's filing. Every transfer date, every amount, the account number at Meridian Bank that she had opened quietly and fed carefully for 18 months. Her attorney's voice did not change tone when she mentioned it, which was somehow worse than if it had. My strong recommendation, her attorney said, is that we negotiate. Courtney set her coffee down on the counter. She looked out the window at the city below. She said, "Okay." The settlement took 3 weeks to finalize. Wade got the house. He got a structured repayment plan for the transferred funds, monthly installments across 2 years, legally binding, documented, and signed. He did not pursue anything beyond that. No additional claims, no punitive filings. His attorney had advised him that he could push further. He declined. He did not want theater. He wanted accuracy. Courtney received her personal property. She received her consulting business, the client list, the contracts, the brand she had built. What remained of it? She signed the final documents on a Wednesday afternoon at her attorney's office. Wade signed the same documents that morning at his. They were not in the same room. There was no final conversation. There was nothing left that required one. Philip never saw what was coming. That was the point. 3 weeks before the divorce settlement, Wade had made 2 quiet calls. Both were to people he had known for years, men who respected his judgment and trusted his professionalism without question. The first was his longtime developer contact. Wade had mentioned, in the course of a routine conversation about industry partnership, that he had come across some public record documentation on a developer named Philip Okafor that seemed worth knowing about before entering any kind of professional arrangement. He emailed the civil complaint records, both of them, sourced and unedited, with no commentary beyond, "Thought this might be relevant to you." The second call was to a senior partner at Carlyle Group, a commercial real estate firm that Wade knew, through industry channels, had been in active discussions with Philip about a major co-development project. Wade had met the senior partner twice at civic planning events. He made the same quiet offer, same records, same single line of context. He did not editorialize. He did not advocate. He simply made information available to people who had a legitimate professional reason to have it. Carlyle Group conducted their own due diligence. It took them 9 days. At the end of those 9 days, they declined to move forward with Philip Okafor on the co-development deal. The deal was worth $2.3 million in projected commission and co-development fees. Philip spent 2 weeks trying to find the source of the collapse. He made calls. He asked careful questions. He got nothing useful back, because there was nothing visible to find. The information that reached Carlyle Group was public record. The men Wade contacted had their own legitimate reasons for doing their own investigation. Nothing pointed anywhere. He would never identify the source. That was also the point. 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Philip ended things with Courtney. He did it the way he always did, cleanly, without drama, with the practiced efficiency of a man who had ended things before and knew how to keep the exit tidy. He said the timing wasn't right. He said he had a lot on his plate professionally. He said he cared about her. The words were smooth and cost him nothing because they meant nothing, and they both knew it, though only one of them had always known it. Courtney found out he was already with someone else through a professional contact who had seen them together at an industry event. The contact mentioned it the way people mention things they assume you already know, casually, briefly, moving on before the sentence had finished landing. Philip had been smiling at the new woman the same way he used to smile at her. Darius called on a Friday afternoon, 2 days after the divorce was officially finalized in the county record. Wade was in his home office when the phone rang. He looked at the name on the screen, then picked up. "Hey," Darius said. His voice was steady, but carrying something underneath it. The particular weight of a man who has sat with something difficult long enough to know exactly what it is. "Hey," Wade said. A short silence. Then, "For what it's worth, she knows exactly what she did, and she knows who you are." Wade was quiet for a moment. He looked at the window. Outside, the afternoon light was long and flat across the yard. "Tell her I wish her well," he said. "I mean that." He did mean it. He hung up and set the phone face down on the desk. The room was very quiet. He sat with that quiet and let it be what it was. Not empty, not heavy, just still. The complete and finished stillness of a man who had said everything he needed to say, done everything that needed doing, and was no longer owed anything by anyone in this particular story. It was the most complete release he knew how to give himself. The presentation room was on the 4th floor of City Hall, and it smelled like old carpet and recycled air and the particular kind of institutional patience that public buildings accumulate over decades. Wade didn't mind it. He had always been comfortable in rooms where the work was serious. He stood at the front of the room in a charcoal suit. No tie, his project boards mounted and lit on either side of the screen behind him. 14 people sat at the long table. City planners, 2 aldermen, a community liaison named Mrs. Ida Cole, who was 71 years old and had lived in the Eastfield neighborhood her entire life, and was not going to let anyone in this room waste her time. Wade liked her immediately. He walked them through the plans with the steady, unhurried confidence of a man who had done the work and knew it. The Eastfield Community Arts Center. 12,000 square feet of flexible interior space. A rooftop terrace designed for outdoor performance. A street-level gallery, open to the public 6 days a week. The entrance facing the corner of Morrow and 9th, exactly where Mrs. Cole had told him, in their first site visit 3 months ago, that the neighborhood's heart had always been. He had moved the entrance 14 feet to make that happen. Mrs. Cole noticed. She looked at the rendering, then at Wade, and gave him a single, slow nod. That nod was worth more than anything else in the room. The questions came. He answered them all. The second alderman pushed back on the rooftop budget, and Wade walked him through the long-term maintenance numbers without blinking. He had built the projection himself, conservatively, on a Sunday morning in February, with his second cup of coffee going cold on the desk beside him. He knew every line of it. The room approved the project to move to the next phase at 2:47 in the afternoon. Wade shook hands, spoke with Mrs. Cole for a few minutes near the window about the gallery programming, and then packed his boards and walked out into the afternoon. The sky was a pale winter blue. His breath showed briefly in the cold air. He drove home. The house looked different now than it had 14 months ago. Not dramatically. It was the same structure, the same bones he had designed and fought for, but it felt like itself in a way it hadn't before. Like a room that had been cleared of furniture that never quite fit, and finally showed you what it actually was. He had renovated the guest room in the spring. 6 weeks of weekend work, done mostly by himself, with help from a contractor friend on the framing. Floor-to-ceiling shelving along the north wall. His best drafting table positioned directly under the east-facing window that caught the morning light from 7 a.m. until just past noon. A reading chair in the corner, angled toward the yard. A good lamp. Nothing extra. It was the home office he had imagined for years and never built, because there had always been something else the space was needed for. Now it was his. Beverly came for dinner on Sundays. She brought wine and opinions and left both behind without apology. She had been there through every phase of the last 18 months, and she still showed up the same way she always had, with her full attention and zero patience for self-pity or unnecessary performance. Last Sunday, she had sat across from him at the kitchen table after dinner, hands wrapped around her mug, and said, "You look like yourself." He had thought about that on the way to the presentation this morning. He wasn't in a new relationship. He wasn't looking for one urgently. He was not broken, and he was not lonely. He was deliberate, which was different. When the time was right, and the person was real, he would know it. He was not a man who rushed foundation. Courtney was still consulting. He knew that much through the ambient professional grapevine that existed in every mid-sized city between people who worked in overlapping industry. Her client list had not recovered fully. 2 of the contracts lost in those 10 days of collapsing walls had not been replaced. She was working. She was not thriving. He did not think about her with satisfaction. He did not think about her with grief. He thought about her the way you think about a structure that failed, not with anger at the structure, but with a clear-eyed understanding of why it failed and what you had learned from it. Philip Okafor was still developing, still polished, still working the room at every industry event he attended. But the room was quietly, permanently smaller than it had been 2 years ago. Carlyle Group had talked, the way firms always talked, carefully, without attribution, in the private language of professional caution. 2 other firms had heard enough to keep their distance. Philip could feel the perimeter shrinking and had no idea why, and no one to confront about it. There was no one visible. That had been the point. Wade was at his drafting table by 9 that evening. The Arts Center plans were spread across the surface in front of him. Elevations, site details, the rooftop structural notes he wanted to revisit before the next consultant call. The house around him was quiet and lit from within, warm against the dark outside the window. His phone sat face down on the corner of the desk. He picked up his pencil. He drew a clean line. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.